Good morning. For those of you that came on early, good morning. Thank you for joining me for this morning's edition of Cichlids and Coffee. I don't know why that name stuck, but I like it. So welcome to Axolotl World. Axolotl. I'm butchering that. I've never had one of those fish. I know they're beautiful, but welcome to you. And I'm competing with UFC. I have some UFC going on in the tank behind me that you'll see during today's live stream. Unfiltered Aquarius. Hello, my friend Paul Lawrence. Crook NSVB 14. Good morning to you. Aquaballs. Hello, Aquaballs. Gotta love that name. KNMA, hello to you. And Daniel Barrett, good morning. And Duke City Aquariums, welcome back, my friends. Julian Del Gadillo, hello to you too. And I hope I didn't butcher your last name. Max.02, hello, sir. Or ma'am. I'm not going to assume anything. And welcome to today's live stream. And hopefully you're drinking out of your very own cup, your own Cichlids and coffee cup. You can pick those up under any one of my videos at the Teespring link. And today we have some fun topics. I've been doing some fun stuff, and I'm going to share it with you. And as a sort of a preview of some other upcoming videos, hello, Michigan. I hope it's not too cold there. It's going to be about 80 degrees here, and so if you can, Michigan, come on out to Southern California to thaw out. Hello, John Lynn, and Mick2OL SK. Okay, that is our Michigan friend, and Baglio, R. Baglio, and John Berg. Saludos de Florida. Saludos, John. Bienvenido. All right, so let's get the show on the road here, and a quick shout out to my moderators, Dennis, Kevin, and the amazing Candi Overhauls, who I hope is going to be jumping on here pretty soon, and if not on already, and of course Dennis Rudell. And Kevin Green, I already told me that he will be probably in and out today because he's got some things he is doing, and that is understandable. Anybody who chips in, their time is greatly appreciated. A quick shout out to the super chatters last week, Jason Douglas and POESEEWI, Jason Douglas, POESEEWI, and Jerry Martin. Thank you for your super chats. Your support of the channel is appreciated. We're going to continue the game. Whoever gets the highest super chat over the record, which is 2250 by Cesar Sosa. Anybody who gets the highest super chat that breaks the record gets a free coffee cup. I'm going to send them out one of these. If they're in the United States, I can't send it to you if you're abroad. I'm sorry, because I'd have to pay $100 for the shipping. And okay, so let's get right into it. And for those of you that are commenting and asking questions and things of this nature, I will get back to them as we go along. And brick for brick, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And so let's talk about buying fish. I've been picking up some fish recently, and you've noticed if you've been watching my videos. And I have another fish that I picked up a couple days ago, and I'm going to be sharing him with you in this next week. It's a fish that I had before, and when I was messing around with this background, I was trying to put equipment behind the background and try and hide things, try and do what you would get with a sump where you have things that are hidden. And in my messing around, somehow this one fish became trapped behind the background. And by the time I noticed, which didn't make any sense to me because there was some food getting back there, there was circulation, there was filtration back there. But by the time I noticed him, he had died, and he was just a great fish. And Duke City starts off strong. Thank you, my friend. And so he was a great fish and got trapped between the background and the back of the tank and ended up dying on me. And it was right after I had a group of 3 of them, and I had sold the other 2 and kept this one, and then I lost the one. And then shortly after that, the person I sold the other 2 fish to sent me a picture how one of them had become a beautiful male, and I felt like a real idiot. So at any rate, I have replaced that fish, and those of you that are really familiar with me know what fish I'm talking about, but you're gonna have to wait for the video if you don't. It's one of my favorite cichlids. And so let's talk about the things I look for when I go to buy fish. One of the things that I look for is the first thing I look for when I walk into a shop is the condition of the tanks, and you know, the overall condition of the shop can also tell you a lot as well. Is there a lot of things thrown around? Are there a lot of things? Is it really unkept? Is it really poorly kept? And you look at the tanks. And that'll tell you a lot of the story right there. Hey, Candi. Thank you for jumping on, Candi. You are very appreciated. Candi is the ninja. She is the ninja of moderators. And so, it's a superhero. So you walk into these shops and you notice that they just look like the tanks are just not kept up. Now, sometimes there's a backstory. I mean, sometimes there can be, you know, the owner of the shop has been sick, or something's going on. Sometimes there can be a backstory behind it, but sometimes it's just the care factor isn't there. There's a shop here locally that whenever I go into it, I become, it's just a little bit upsetting, because you just see a lot of fish that are just in distress, and you don't really want to rag the guy. You don't want to rag the owner, but you know he'd sell a lot more fish if the place was looking better, right? So you look. One, I look at the condition of the tanks. You look at the overall condition of the fish. Are there a lot of fish that look in distress? Clamped fins, hanging at the back, sunken bellies. I mean, if you see a lot of this going on, you're probably in a shop that you need to get out of. Now, the other point I look for, and this is something I always ask, are your tanks sharing filtration? Are they sharing, is water, am I really looking at one big water system that happens to be, and the place I paid a visit to a couple days ago, one of the first questions I asked him was about water changes, and he showed me how he had taken hundreds of tanks. And wait till you see this place. I'm gonna try and, if I have time, I'm gonna try and release the video tomorrow. The largest freshwater aquarium store in the West, I think, from what I could tell. I mean, this is row after row of 120-gallon tanks, row after row after row. I mean, I could have spent all day in there, and I am just really excited to share this place with you. But every tank had its own independent water change system where it would drain and get fresh water in, and there was no chance of a cross-contamination. So if you go into a place, and I know sometimes, I'm not saying this to rag on Petco's and PetSmarts, because they're the big box store, they're the kind of the 800-pound gorilla, and we all use them, we all go to them occasionally for something. But sometimes if you go there, you'll notice that they do have a, hey Josh Cunningham, welcome to the live stream, buddy. You'll notice that they have a shared system, and so if there's a sick fish in the tank that's 20 yards away, you can be pretty sure all of those tanks are contaminated, and so. And it's very rare I'll go into a large box store and not see a tank with several fish that look distressed, or they're just plain belly up and dead. And so makes me real reluctant to pick up fish there, even though I have bought a few in the past that turned out okay. But anyway, when I walk into a store, I like to talk to the owner. I like to find out about his quarantine. What's your, hey, Cesar Sosa coming in with $1.99. Thank you, my friend. And Cesar, you got your mug. Okay, thank you, sir. At any rate, I want to talk to the owner and ask him questions a little bit. Like, what's your quarantine policy? When you receive fish, you know, like if I walk in and the owner says, "Oh, do you like those fish? They just came in yesterday," and he has them for sale. Red flag. A red flag goes up immediately. Whoa, wait a minute! What do you mean you just got these yesterday from Indonesia and you're selling them? What are we talking about here? What kind of parasites or what? Have you treated these fish? What's happening? You know. So so at any rate, I ask about their quarantine policy. I take a look at their filtration, and I find out what they're feeding them. Now, I find out what they're feeding them for two reasons. One is I want to see if they're using a quality food, number one, and number two, I want to see if I want to see what they're feeding, so that if I do buy a fish, if I do end up being impressed by the place and buy a fish, I want to be able to give it a similar food, a comparable food, so that it starts to get strong and eat, which is one of the criteria for coming out of quarantine. I have 3 fish in quarantine right now. 3 fish in quarantine. I had to restart the clock. I restart the clock every time I add the fish, and I'm doing that. I'm doing that on purpose because I want to add 3 or more fish to the tank behind me to further spread things out. So, so I want to go ahead and I've restarted the clock on the quarantine tank. So in 1 month, I'll be ready to add 3 fish to this tank. Now, that means if those fish are eating, active, somewhat aggressive, at that point, I'll move all 3 of them into this tank, and I'll probably end up adding 5 more fish, and that might be the limit on this one, but I'll probably end up adding maybe 5 or 6 to this tank. 3 that are going to come out of quarantine, and 3 that are going to graduate from the 100-gallon. The Buccochromis notatania, the biggest Buccochromis I have in the 100, is starting to assert himself and has put on some size, and I believe it's a male. Fingers crossed. It looks like it's taking on the characteristics of a male. That fish should go in here. I think the Livingstoni is ready to come into this tank. He's not super big, but he has a lot of attitude. He will not be, as I've said before, the biggest dog in the fight, but there's a lot of fight in that dog. So the Livingstoni will probably come in here, and possibly 1 other fish from that 100 together with the 3 that are in quarantine. So I'll be able to add a lot of fish at once and really kind of mix things up. I'll move plants around, I'll move rocks around, and hopefully things will calm down. You'll see behind me the eye biter is still asserting himself. He is certainly the tank boss. He has backed off from the Venusus. The Venusus is now able to swim around freely and doesn't get harassed too much. I think it's been established very clearly that the Venusus is subdominant. He lost his colors and still has some blue in the face, but his body patterns came back, and so the eye biter knows he's in charge. Now the eye biter is going after the trout. The trout is a large fish, perhaps longer than the eye biter. So the eye biter is asserting himself and making sure that he's in charge of and that the trout doesn't get any ideas. At what point is he going to back off from the trout? I don't know. I haven't seen serious fin damage. I haven't seen a lot of marks on the sides of the fish, so it doesn't look like I'm getting a lot of serious hits from the eye biter. Just a lot of harassment and stress. So hopefully he'll calm down and back off from the trout, and I'm not going to have to put that eye biter in the sump. That is what I will end up doing. Hey, Denny, glad you're here, Denny. I will put that eye biter in the sump if he becomes too violent, and of course, if I put him back after that and he remains violent, I would have to sell him, which would be a shame because he's a absolute gorgeous F1 eye biter that I picked up from the Cichlid shack. But Hopefully things will calm down. I'll add more fish. I'll spread things out a little bit more, and I will go ahead and go from there. Now, someone just posted that somebody doesn't quarantine because they breed them themselves. Now, you know what? Look, if what you're buying are, 10th, 20th, 30th generation fish, and everybody's been looking healthy the whole time, you sort of have a built-in quarantine. So what he's saying, I believe it's Mike. Is it Mike, or am I thinking of Imperial? Might be also. It's either. I think it might be Mike over at Tampa Bay. What he's saying is that he really already has a quarantine. He's already seen and observed them so long that he's not worried that they have some disease. I get it. I get where he's coming from. Again, is he sharing filtration? Does he have a shared filtration system? And is he bringing in new fish? And are they partaking in that shared filtration? I don't know. And I have received a couple fish that died shortly after I got them from Tampa Bay, and he replaced them immediately. The big Fusco behind me is from Tampa Bay. I raised him up from a fry, and I have a beautiful, just a real pretty fish that's starting to color up. The sand diver in the 60 gallon. If you've seen that fish, the sand diver in the 60 gallon is starting to take on that metallic, beautiful color. It's definitely a male. That's one that I picked up from Tampa Bay, and sent me a long time ago that you were guaranteeing as males. I'm not even sure if he does that anymore, but some of the fish that you were guaranteeing as male turned out to be female. And I gave away one ended up dying, blah, blah, blah. And he sent me some fish right away. The problem, though, is that by the time you find out that they're not a male, the other fish have put on so much size that now you have to take the replacements and grow them out separately before you can add them to the original batch that you received from him. So don't count on this guaranteed male. If he still offers that, don't count on that guarantee. Because it's not. I don't even see how at 1 inch you can even pretend to vent or sex a fish. I don't see how you could do that. So at any rate, so those are some of the questions, some of the checklist that I would use when I go into a local fish store. The general appearance. The level of communication that I get, and the way the person who works there and at the shop answers the questions. Preferably, I can communicate with the owner, and that's what happened a couple days ago at the local fish shop that I paid a visit to. I was able to spend some time with the owner, and I was very, very impressed, and by his dedication, by his love of the hobby, by what he's trying to accomplish, by the quality and some of the rare fish he had in there. He had one fish that was considered the most aggressive fish that is legal to own in the United States. And you'll see that in the video. Hopefully I can post it tomorrow. My visit to this local fish store. Largest freshwater fish store in the West. Now, what about buying online? What are some of the things you want to think of when you're buying online? When you're buying online, again, you want to ask about their quarantine policy. What are they doing with quarantine? How do they quarantine? How long do they quarantine? Do they medicate when they quarantine? Those are questions I would ask before buying online. I've had online sellers tell me, I have that fish in stock, but I can't sell them to you for probably a month or more. You know what? It's on the one hand, it's frustrating that I can't get the fish I want. On the other hand, I'm very, very impressed that the person refuses to sell me a fish until they are 100% certain that that fish is robust, healthy, not really contaminated or carrying anything that could be that could be deadly for where he's going. So what is their quarantine policy? What are they feeding their fish? So that when you get that fish, you can start to be comparable in what you're feeding. Is he feeding mostly flakes? Is he or she feeding flakes? Then you should try some flakes when you first get that fish. Really kind of help them to acclimate, and then switch over to whatever is your preferred feeding regimen. What's their dead on arrival policy? What is the dead? I mean, these sellers have different policies, and you better know the fine print before you order. Some of them just say, send me a picture. And if they're a reputable dealer, your Cunningham, your Cichlid Shacks, your Trevor O'Shea, your Wonder of Cichlids, right? Tampa Bay replaced a fish from me one time. Not Tampa Bay, yes, but also Imperial replaced a fish from me one time. You send them a picture, and you get a fish right back to replace it. No hassles, no questions asked, and the response is fast. How quick do they respond? And that's important to me. How fast is the communication? Now, here's one test you can do. You're thinking about buying from somebody online? Send them an email with some questions. If you don't get an answer for a couple weeks, hey, buyer beware. I like to see someone who's on it. They get a fast reply to me. If they can't get me an answer, I get some kind of reply that says, hey, I'll get back to you right away. I'm on vacation. Hey, that kind of thing. So how fast do they respond to communication? What's their quarantine policy? And what's their dead on arrival policy? And also, what's their shipping policy? I mean, let's face it, shipping has probably stopped more people from hitting the complete your purchase, right? You get to the very end and you notice that they've added $40, $50, $60 for overnight shipping, for cargo shipping or something like that, and your finger will just can't hit that button, because all of a sudden you sit back and go, that fish is going to cost me $150. So how do you work around that? Well, first of all, if you have a fish you want bad enough, you'll bite the bullet. I've done that, right? But wait until there's several fish that you want, because that shipping cost is probably going to stay the same. So, pick up 4 fish, 5 fish, 6 fish, right? And when you spread that out, that shipping cost over the fish, and the fact that you're getting quality fish that you can't really find elsewhere or locally, it's not that bad then. Now, in today's social media world, you also have a very powerful tool, and that is looking at reviews. Look at Google reviews, right? Look at what's being said on the internet about this vendor, keeping in mind that sometimes competitors will post negative things about their competition and pretend to be buyers, and they're just trolling, right? They're just being trolls. So take everything with a grain of salt, but look at the reviews. If this person has 100+ Google reviews and they're at 4.5 or better, you're in good shape. So, and I wouldn't necessarily worry. Do they get back to you quickly when you communicate? And also, another thing to consider when you're buying online, this is something I consider: how far away are they from you? How far is that fish going to travel? In the middle of the winter, I don't necessarily like to order fish from, let's say, the Northeast, because there's a lot that can go wrong with that box. I might order from Cichlid Shack, Arizona. That's just a hop. It's just a hop over here. Quick flight, nonstop, Arizona to Burbank. Very little can go wrong, okay? Utah, Northern California. Yeah, I'll order from those places. The box will come very directly to where I am. But in the winter, I'm going to be reluctant. There are some vendors that will not ship to you when the weather turns. And again, that's impressive to me. That's impressive that a vendor will do that. Somebody mentioned Dave's rare. Dave is legit. Dave's rare. That guy knows what he's talking about. He's a experienced and knowledgeable breeder and sells quality fish. Live Fish Direct. I've gotten a lot of fish from Live Fish Direct. I think if you use the ben.o or ben.10 or something, you get a bag of food when you order from them. So again, there are quality folks up there. Watch out for what Trevor O'Shea over at the Wonder of Cichlids, he calls the pop-up seller. There's a type of seller called a pop-up seller. They just show up and they're offering some pretty good looking fish at a incredible price. And there's a few people that are commenting on how wonderful the fish is that they picked up from this person. Well, guess what? People can have a dozen ghost accounts, a dozen phantom accounts that are really them, and they can go in and they can post wonderful reviews. They can post some wonderful. This is exactly how what is called a Ponzi scheme works. A Ponzi scheme gets a couple satisfied people that got some money back. They start talking it up. They do the heavy lifting, and they spread the word. More people come in. And all of a sudden the whole thing collapses. The vendor disappears. You can't find it. He or she has, 100 deposits at averaging at about $50 a piece, and they're off the grid. All the accounts have been closed. You can't find them, and unfortunately that has happened in our fish keeping community, and I've seen it happen, and it's not good. So look for someone that's been around for a while. Don't go with a pop-up vendor, even though the deal looks great and it seems to have some good reviews. A pop-up vendor can be bad news. All right, there's a lot of established guys. Southeast Cichlids, right? Dave's, Live Fish Direct, Tampa Bay, Imperial. There's a lot of folks out there that have been around for a long time, a couple years, 2 years, 5 years. They're in the game. They're all in. And Cichlid Shack, Josh Cunningham, over at Cunningham Cichlids, these guys are all in. If you've seen what they have invested in tanks and what they have going on with their breeding, that's the kind of person you want to work with. Not someone that just had a few fry in his garage tank and now wants to sell them to you. That's not a knock on local breeders. There are some very high quality local breeders that you'll never find on the internet, and you'll just meet them through clubs. Those can also be very, very legit, okay? So do you have any tips on buying from a local or from over the internet? Do you have any tips? I want you to share them in the comments, either in the comments now as we're streaming, or share them in the comments below this video after it posts to YouTube. What tips do you have for buying fish, either locally or over the internet? And also, who do you recommend? I don't necessarily want to hear who you want to slam, right? Who you feel I don't really care about that. But I do want to hear who you recommend. Who would you give a 5-star rating to? Share that, because that's I think that's awesome. And someone mentioned CK. If you're in the Southern California area, I paid a visit to CK, and you can see it in my videos. A visit to that CK shop, and amazing what I saw there. I still, even with my visit to the shop a couple days ago, I have still not gone to a shop that had comparable plants to the plants I saw at CK. Absolutely mind-blowing. I was looking for one frayed edge on one of their plants. Every plant was absolutely perfect. So CK. So a quick plug for a couple upcoming videos. Have you folks ever used this thing? Polyfilter. Works in power filters, under gravel filters, canisters, wet dry sumps, and removes harmful organics, toxic ammonia, heavy metals, all forms of phosphates, medication after treatments. So after you've treated your tank, and if you don't want to put charcoal back in, let's say to remove the residual medication, you can go ahead and drop some of this in, and it will absorb the bad stuff. And you can even cut it into little pieces like this and float it in your tank, and it'll quickly change color and start to show you what's going on. And the color, there's a color code back here, and it tells you based on the color what you have going on in your tank. And so there's a video I'm going to put out on this. My tanks, I think I keep my tanks in pretty good shape. They're usually pretty clean, they look pretty good, but I put some of this in all of my tanks, and I was shocked by what was absorbed and how fast it changed colors. And at any rate, it doesn't soften the water, which is good for us cichlid keepers, and it doesn't remove trace minerals, again, something that's very, very good. And if you have, let's say, shrimp, invertebrates, sensitive fish, things of this nature, this is good because it'll take out the bad stuff that they can be sensitive to. So anyway, I have an upcoming video on this product, and certainly share your comments if you've used it and what you think about it. And my other video, of course, is going to be a walkthrough of the largest freshwater shop on the West Coast, apparently. And you're going to enjoy this. This shop is going to blow you away. It's about an hour and a half to 2 hours away from me. It's down near San Diego. And so it's not like I can hop in my car and just go there whenever I want. But when you see this shop, you're going to say, oh my goodness, I wish they were near me. And this is not just cichlids. I'm talking about just about everything imaginable. He's had it open for 90 days, I believe, and already breeding is going on like crazy, which is a testament to the person's fish keeping and the quality of the tanks. There were hundreds of fry that were in his breeding tanks. And anyway, really a fun place. I'm really looking forward to sharing that video with you folks. So having talked about buying fish, a couple more tips before I wrap up on that. Always try and do research before you acquire a fish. An impulse fish purchase can be a real problem. And ask me how I know. That's how I got started in cichlids, and I was impulse buying. If the word cichlid was in the name, I would buy the fish, and later on to find out that there are very different types in that family from different regions of the world, different lakes. And so there's no excuse for not doing front-end research, even on an impulse purchase. You carry around a phone, you can just get right onto Google and take a picture of the fish, Google that fish, see what you got, and so there's really no excuse. I mean, you can do research right on the spot. You can go ahead and do your research. And I've been real close to buying a couple fish that looked great, and then I did the research and said, oh, wait a minute, this fish is going to require a different kind of tank than or a different kind of setup than I have. Also, when you buy your fish, be aware of how fast they grow and how big they grow, and that way you can pace it. For example, let's say you want to keep a Xeroc and a Venusis. Buy a medium to good size Xeroc and let that Xeroc get really comfortable, and then buy a smaller Venusis and maybe half the size of the Xeroc. Because in about 4 to 6 months, the Xeroc is going to be bigger than the Venusis is going to be bigger than your Xeroc. But by then, the Xeroc is comfortable, and the Venusis is kind of used to kind of being a little smaller. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to get chaos, but just a tip, pace it out correctly. And if you're in like a 60-gallon, let's say, and you do your research, maybe you shouldn't get a Venusis. Maybe you shouldn't get a trout. Certainly you wouldn't get a large eye biter, because the fish is just going to be too crazy and get too big too fast. So again, pace out your fish buying based on speed of growth and what's going to be happening 6 months to a year from now. This is why the inch per gallon rule is nonsense. You've got to think with the entire process, including your maintenance schedule and your filtration and all that water change schedule, all that. You got to think with so many factors. It really is there's no real one rule like a 1 inch per gallon that answers all questions. It doesn't exist. Okay. So avoid impulse purchases. I've done them. This is why people buy red tail cats and take them home. And this is why when you go to local fish stores, you'll see giant plecos and giant red tail cats stuck, where they barely fit in a 50 or a 75 gallon because someone brought it back. And it's a shame when you see that. So avoid these impulse purchases. Always understand the dietary needs of any fish that you buy. If you have a predator tank that relies primarily on protein, high proteins, and you start adding fish that are a herbivore or a fish that needs veg in the diet, like a protomelis, Taiwan reef, right? Your Taiwan reef, your tangerine tigers, your red empress. Those fish need veggies. So if you add those to your collection of HAPs, you're going to have to change the diet. So again, do the research. And so when you add those fish, start dropping in some Zoomed spirulina, maybe drop in a piece of cucumber, maybe some peas that you've taken the skin off, things like that. Just be aware of it. And also be aware of, is the fish plant friendly? Those of you watch my video, I Give Up. it got a lot of views. I think mainly because the hook of the title. Ben gave up. What did he give up on? I gave up on live plants because even my little fish, even the ones in the 60, destroyed the Anubias, and they have very short memories. And because Anubias are supposed to be bitter, so they bite it, they go, oh, bitter, they spit it out, and they go, oh, plant, bite it, oh, bitter, spit it out, oh, a plant. It's like they're just sort of, they don't really have big brains. And so at any rate, I gave up on plants, and that was what that video was about. And two prominent YouTubers recommended Anubias for cichlids. I'm not going to say their names because I love both of them. So, all right. Also, you better be aware of the requirements that those fish that you are buying. Hey, sister, thank you. Be aware of the requirements of those fish. Are they a high pH fish, medium, low pH fish? Do you need some wood in your tank? Do you need to keep your tank a little warmer for that type of fish? Like I understand discus need to be a little bit warmer, right? So really understand what that fish needs. Is it an open swimmer? Do you need to have a lot of open space? Do they need rocks? Really research and understand what that fish is going to need before you bring them home, and you'll end up in much better shape. Now, some people are sticklers for how they really are hardcore on maintaining the exact parameters of where that fish originated from. Like, well, I need my tank to be exactly like Lake Malawi and to have the exact mineral content and the exact, open water and this, or I need to have the pH at this exact. Other people seem to think that, look, we're buying fish that have been bred, in some cases locally, for 100 generations. You are acquiring the Xerox copy. You're getting 100 generations of the local pH and whatever that lower pH might be, and living under different sort of so people make a case on both sides. They say, wait a minute, have the fish adapted, and will they thrive in parameters that are lower or different than what they are in where they originated from as a species, or will they thrive in that, or will they sort of kind of suffer through it and maybe have a shorter life, never really blossom into their full beauty. And I think one of the things you can check is, are they breeding? If these fish are breeding, chances are that they've adapted pretty well. So at any rate, that's my 2 cents on buying fish, and that's my preview of upcoming videos. And I noticed that there were a couple questions here. Let me see. I had a question from somebody that came with a super chat. Cesar Sosa wanted to know any suggestions on food for my peacock cichlids. Cesar, what I'm using currently is a combination. I'm using, and I don't know how I got off on this. I think it started when I started getting a lot of samples from SuperChats. Folks see this shirt, SuperChats. They're in Dover, Delaware. SuperChats. Lisa and her family have a shop there. Beautiful shop. Anything that you need for your fish. Doesn't have to be cichlids, even though cichlid is in the name. They have a lot of products, water conditioners, water treatment, and I'm giving Lisa a plug because they are awesome. They ship for free. And it's just a family-owned business, and they're just wonderful people. And I love supporting family-owned businesses like Lisa and her family. And if you go there, I believe there's a code. If you go to the ben.o.cichlid Facebook page and you go into the guidelines and rules, you'll notice there's a discussion on codes. And we have a code for SuperChats where you can get a discount. And but they give you free shipping, so and no tax. So in California, we pay like 10% tax, so no tax, free shipping. So it's a very nice savings, and so that's where I buy from. And so SuperChats in Dover, Delaware. Check them out on the web. I think maybe Candi is posting. She's posting the Facebook group, and Lisa and her family are just great folks. So there's my plug for that. And she started sending me samples. So all of a sudden I have bug bites, and I have Dr. Bressler, and I have I have some omega this, and I have some. I started feeding these different types of foods. I noticed the fish were showing tremendous colors, going crazy around feeding time, where they're splashing everywhere, and I have to wipe the tank down because they've got water everywhere, and so what I've ended up doing is moving in the direction of variety, and so now I feed variety. I feed Northfin pellets. I feed Northfin krill flake. I feed krill gold, omega-1 flakes, cobalt frozen, and cobalt probiotic predator pellets, and so just a variety of stuff. Frozen krill. Okay, so there's lots of a combination of things, and so I'm giving them variety. If you've heard me talk about food before, you know my thoughts on it. I don't think any one company has the answer for everything. They all have their sort of theories and where they're strong and where they're not, and so I think the best way to shore up where one company might be a little bit off or a little weak is with variety. And I read an article the other day about fish food, and it talked about how very active fish, like the fish you see behind me, at least the ones that aren't scared to death, the very active fish need a higher content of fat in the food. Now that's interesting. You know, we look at the fish food and we think in terms of what we've been educated in. Oh, fat. Well, but the truth is they actually need fat. Now, what's the source of that fat? And is it a source that the fish can use easily? And that's where you rely on the research and the expertise of the company. So do you trust the company? I trust Omega-1, I trust Cobalt, I trust Northfin, I trust that Dr. Bressler dude, I trust ZooMed's been around for a long time. They're not going to put out a crap product, right? So anyway, so I use Variety Caesar, and there you go. You got me going, and there's the answer. Now, Edgar Ibar, how many apps? I think you meant HAPs, because if you put apps in your tank, they're not going to work. HAPs and peacocks, can I fit in a 100-gallon? This was the topic of, I want you to watch last week's live stream? We talk a lot about that. And I can't give you one number that is guaranteed. It depends what fish you pick, how often you're going to be maintaining that tank, right? The size of your water changes, the amount of filtration and water turnover. Where are those fish going to be in 6 months and a year from now? What kind of size are they going to have? How often are you going to feed them? How much are you going to feed them? We have a lot of moving parts in that question. So, so my answer for you is, for a more detailed and expanded discussion on that, watch last week's live stream, because we really get into it, and you know, you have to look at where these fish are going to be in a year, and your maintenance, your feeding, your water turnover, how much you're going to stick to the plan. Are you going to be increasing your maintenance over time as the fish put on size? They create more waste, so you're going to have to up your maintenance over time. You can't stay on the same schedule you were on when they were peewees, right? When they were fry. So a lot of factors, a lot of moving parts. So I hope you're drinking out of one of these cups. And the highest super chat today, and I think so far, if somebody did break the record earlier, is going to get a cup. Unless somebody comes in higher, then they're going to get a cup shipped to them if they're in the United States. Let's pick up some of the questions that came up in last week's super chat, or in last week's live stream. Before we wrap up here, Javier Roman, he asked. I had 11 cichlids and they all died from one day to the next after about 1 month. Any ideas on what could have caused this? And I think Javier also mentioned later in the live stream that the water parameters were testing out perfect. And again, I think we commented a little bit on that. We hate to see that. We hate to see these massive die-offs that occur. When I hear something like that and they tell me that their water was testing out great, something got in there, something got in there. There are some diseases, some types of diseases that can get into a tank and that are sudden killers and can show no outward signs. There are some diseases like that. And there's even a type of fish tuberculosis, I think. I mean, there's different kinds of, you hate to hear that. My first guess is an additive from the water supply source. Something got in there and it ended up poisoning, shocking your fish. Or maybe you had a large pH shift that occurred, something that was added that changed the pH, and when you did a water change, there was some type of a shock that was too big. These fish are pretty hardy. They can usually take a lot. They'll flash, they'll look a little bit distressed. But for them to die off like that, it had to be something major that was off. And so, Shala Panella, hi Ben, we have the same mug at home. Thank you, Shala. Steve Weber, learned a lot so far from your chat. Been doing peacock cichlids now for over 30 years. Love my 220-gallon tank. Awesome, Steve. But I love that when people jump on that are veterans, that they've been at it for 30 years, 40 years, right? 25 years. And they say that they're getting something out of this stream or out of the videos. That to me just sort of rocks my world, because it shows me that there's a willingness to learn. It shows me that they're not at a place where they feel they know everything already, because you know my thoughts about that. That's exactly where you get real stupid, when you think you know it all. And anyway, I'm just very, very humbled and pleased to hear that people that experience can get something out of these live streams. Ginger Graves, I keep well-stocked tanks, but I have lots of filtration, do big weekly water changes, only way to do it. I think you're right, Ginger. If you want to have well-stocked tanks, and I'm getting away from the term overstocked, because overstocked means that you're stressing your fish and keeping them in poor conditions. Well-stocked, let's call it well-stocked. And hello, Michael. And let's see here. Flower 1 stars. When do you increase your water changes? How much water, and do you need to clean the filters at each time? I wouldn't suggest big water changes when you're doing filter maintenance. You're asking for trouble, because you're changing too much too fast. You might be killing off too much beneficial bacteria, disrupting too much. So when I do canister maintenance, the only water I pull out of the tank is the amount of water I'm going to need to store the beneficial bacteria while I clean out the canister. So I have 2 buckets, and I dip the beneficial bacteria in the first bucket just to get the stuff that might have caked on the outside of it, which is preventing the anaerobic bacteria deep in the media from being able to stay alive. So I'll dip it a few times and then put it into the second bucket, and it's all tank water. And then I clean out the canisters and put them back together, fill the canister back up with tank water, and that sort of gives me like a 20% water change. I wouldn't do a big water change when I do canisters, because again, you can shock your fish. All right, let's remember, anything you do with your fish, even me sitting here in front of this tank and moving around to some degree, is somewhat stressful to some degree. Okay. Daniel Barrett, how many species would be appropriate for a 75-gallon Buna tank? I can't comment intelligently on Bunas, because the Mabunas are something I had a yellowtail and a lab and electric yellow, and what else did I have? I had about 4 or 5 on rusty, and I had some beautiful ones, and I ended up switching over to HAPs and peacocks, and so I can't really say I'm expert on that, but I would say in a good sized tank, I mean, just don't get an Oratus. If you get an Oratus, you're in trouble. That's just my 2 cents. Andy's Tech actually just lost all my fish due to a heater failure. Water jumped from 78 to somewhere in the 90 to 100 range. I wasn't home to catch it. Ouch. I am sorry, Andy, that happened. That right there is a case for controllers. The good thing about a controller that your heater is plugged into is that if you get above a certain temperature, the power is cut off to your heaters, and so you will not cook your fish. I have a very heavy-duty controller on this that runs 2 heaters. I have one on the 100. I do not have one on the 60, full disclosure, but that is a case for a controller. Buy good quality heaters, right? Your new generation of Cobalts, your made in Germany, Eheims, buy good quality heaters, put them into a controller that will shut off above a certain temperature. And I'm sorry that happened. Flower 1 stars wants to know how many guppies can go into a 10-gallon. Flower doesn't matter, because if you put 5 in 6 weeks, you're going to have 15, and in 10, in 20 weeks, you're going to have 100 guppies. So the guppies are the rabbits of the fish world. So Start with a male and 4 females, and then and go from there, and start buying more tanks right away. Mark's Fish, what are your thoughts on a living stony? You're talking about one of my favorite HAPs. I have a living stony that I'm going to be bringing over to this tank, and they're beautiful. I love living stony. I love the patterns. If you folks haven't gone onto the web and looked up living stony hunting ambush predator videos of a living stony, amazing. They lay on their side. They get pretty white. They get kind of white, and they look like they're dead and rotting. And when a fish comes over and says, "Hey, look, a dead fish, I'm going to take a bite," boom, they're gone. So one of the most amazing ambush predators, I think, in Lake Malawi, the living stony. And so I've seen people that have had them that they've laid on their side in the tank, and it's just crazy. They lose their color, they get kind of white, and so they look like they're dying, right? Amazing fish. They get very big. They can become very, very aggressive. The one I'm going to put in here is going to be maybe 4 inches. So roughly around there. He's a fired up male. He's going to get an attitude adjustment when he first arrives, right? He's going to get a tune-up, and then he'll settle down, and then he'll start to put on some size, and then he'll fall within the pecking order. Abdul Rahman, hi, love from India, great job. Abdul Rahman, hey, why is the Venusus at the back sitting idle? That was the week when the eye biter took over, and the Venusus was laying low, and no real damage to the Venusus. He did okay, and now he's being left alone. But the eye biter is definitely in charge, Abdul. And love back to you in India. I love the fact that international viewers will tune in. I think it's amazing what we're doing here. Jerry Martin, are all your fish in the tank behind you HAPs? Yes. They all would fall within that qualification. Protomelis, yeah, they're all HAPs. They're all HAPs, except for the pleco. I have a big pleco in there. And I'd like to add a big Synodontis. At some point, I'm just not sure at this part in the game if that would work. Hello from London. Again, the international folks are speaking up. Hello, London. Just amazes me that I can talk to somebody in that part of the world. Chevy Fish, Ben, I've often wondered when we squeeze out our sponges during cleaning, if we're squishing the life out of beneficial bacteria. What's your take on this? Your sponges will eventually become clogged and restrict flow. So they at some point, and hello Australia, they will at some point need to get squeezed. Squeeze them in tank water. And here's a theory that I heard one time. The weaker, less attached, and in many cases already dying or dead beneficial bacteria, because it goes through a life cycle, will get removed. The stronger bacteria that is holding on with more tenacity, it will hold on, and so you'll start developing a stronger strain of bacteria. That was the theory that was shared to me, which made a lot of sense. And so at any rate, I do squeeze mine out in tank water. It's amazing how much black crud comes out of there, and dead bacteria comes out of there as well. So in my case, I like to run multiple filters. So I service one, squeeze everything out of that, clean that one up nice. The other one is left alone. So I have a core of bacteria that's being left alone. And then a few weeks later, I'll do that second filter. So less chance of shocking things if you have multiple filters, okay? So don't worry, you're not killing your fish when you're cleaning your sponges. Do rinse them in tank water unless you have a tremendous amount of bacteria in other places, okay? Rob5, this was a comment I pulled from underneath the video. Rob5, You could have opened up a whole can of worms with the subject, Ben, the subject being how many fish can you get in a tank? What is technically possible for stocking levels is one thing, and what is morally correct is another. I read that cichlids have a memory of 7 years, so they are capable of intelligent thought. Mine recognize me, and if a stranger approaches the tank, they get real skittish. The folks in here seem genuinely caring for the welfare of their fish, and that's great. So overstocking may just stress the fish more. Any thoughts? You can start to stock a tank to a point where, yes, there is so much ammonia being produced that your filtration is having a hard time keeping up, and you're getting readings of 80 to 100 or more in your nitrates, no matter what you do to the tank, no matter how you service it. You're getting, and maybe you're getting an occasional low reading of ammonia. If you're starting to cross over into that line, you might be headed towards a collapse. You might be headed towards a crash. And so cull it back a bit. Cull it back. I have some fish in the 100 right now. 1 or 2 deep water, Placidochromis deep waters. 1 or 2 gazelles, Placidochromis gazelles. Possibly a Bucochromis notitania, and a couple other fish. I'm going to cull those fish. And what do I mean by that? If you're local in Southern California, you want those fish, make me an offer. Come on over. I'll give them to you at a real fair price. I've got to make some room in that 100. It's getting crowded. And I've got I have the sand diver and a couple other fish that are going to be brought over from the 100 and put into brought over from the 60 and put into the 100. And so what that means is I've got to, GP, thank you, buddy. So that means I've got to make a little more room. I don't want to overstress that tank. I have the algae scrubber in there and the FX6 doing all the heavy lifting with the filtration. GP, if you're in the United States, you're going to get a mug, my friend. But if you're not in the U.S., I can't send it to you. But I can send. I'll still send it to the prior person that did the high super chat. But thank you, GP. Thank you so much, buddy. You really do support the channel, and I'm glad you're back. I know your work schedule is keeping you away. I'm really glad you're back, my friend. So at any rate, yes, there is a point where you have to make a decision. You are? Then you won. You're getting a mug. You're the high bidder. You broke the record, and the highest super chat. You get the mug. Send me your mailing address to ben. Let me see. ben.o.cichlid. ben.o.cichlid @gmail. Send me your mailing address. Okay. So we're on the hour, and I would like to keep going, but I actually have to go to work today. So my tank maintenance is going to be put off till tomorrow, which I hate because I like to have one day where I don't work and I can chill and sit back. So, but I'm going to do the tanks tomorrow because I have to work, and after work, I'm going to go on a date with my wife. So for those of you that are married, here's my take your wife out on a date with nobody else, leave the kids, and so that you can remind yourselves why you got together to begin with. That's the end of my marriage advice. I've been married 36 years, and anyway, so I have a date tonight. So fish maintenance goes tomorrow. So that's it for me, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. You folks are very, very appreciated. I noticed the numbers have been going up. I love that. Be sure to hit that like, and thank you to my super chatters. You guys and gals are the best, and thank you to all of you. And be sure to rate and comment and share and all the other stuff. You folks, when I say you are the best, I really do mean it. And when I say you rock, I really do mean it. I really do mean that you rock. Thank you, Candi. You're the best. Denny, if you're still around. Kevin, thank you for your help. And you folks have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining me for Cichlids and Coffee. Bye-bye.